Okay, it's 4:02 and it's Wednesday again with our next latest virtual Ask Me Anything. Hello, my name is Mary Yusevich, and I am one of the original and continue to be a board member to NEWIEE, and I'm honored to moderate this week's Ask Me Anything conversation with Shalaya Morissette. Today's Ask Me Anything is one of a series of conversations that NEWIEE is hosting with a number of incredible female leaders in energy and environment. AMA, as we call them, events occur regularly on the second Wednesday of the month, so you should mark your calendar, look for the announcements. At the end, they'll tell you our next Ask Me Anything. If you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, definitely make sure you head to the website. It's very easy. It's NEWIEE.org. Get on our list and keep an eye on our calendar and social channels for future speaker announcement. Before I start getting into our conversation with our speaker today, I want to thank our annual event sponsors, and that is Eversource, First Light Power, Robinson Coal, and Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, who are only making our in-person, since because of the COVID events, we were unable to do our in-person events, and so we launched Ask Me Anything in response to this global pandemic, and it was through these organizations that made it possible for us to be able to hold this event today. So I can't thank them enough for what they have been able to do. We hope that today's event will be both interactive and conversational. It's great. Shayla is a wonderful person to have that back and forth banter, so I think you're going to find that she is truly a person you can ask her anything. I would like you to go down to the bottom of your screen. You'll see where it says Q&A. Please put your questions in there, and then I will ask our speaker, basically the question. I like to do is do some personal questions and then maybe some industry related questions. So please feel free to submit both types of questions. So as I said, it gives me great pleasure today to introduce Shalaya Morissette. Shalaya is a senior technical inspector with the Gas Pipeline Safety Group for National Grid USA. Welcome, Shalaya. It's a pleasure to have you on Ask Me Anything.
Thank you.
Prior to joining National Grid, she held various roles in higher education, including enrollment service project manager and a global transportation director of affiliate relations. And I understand you're the chapter president, and her goal is to help facilitate positive relationships between chapters and organizations that would otherwise never connect, which I think is awesome. She continues to develop active engagements and encourage young people to come involved in the energy industry. Shalaya received her bachelor degree in business administration from Georgia, how do you say that college? I'm sorry.
Gwinnett, Georgia Gwinnett College.
Okay, and her master's in education from Cambridge College. My husband went there too. And as a lifetime learner, she has continued her education by pursuing a second bachelor's degree. This is amazing. In nuclear energy technology with Excelsior College. Wow, that's impressive. When she isn't glued to the computer screen, which you must be, she spends time hiking, collecting records, trying yoga, but I know something that's not in her bio, which is she's also looking at motorcycles and getting her license to drive a motorcycle. That is, I'm like, that is scary, but good for you, Shalaya. So welcome so much to Ask Me Anything. We really, really appreciate you joining us today. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we get into the questions about how come you basically agreed to do Ask Me Anything? We're putting you on the spotlight here.
Well, first things first, I passed the motorcycle license test this morning.
Congratulations. And you're alive, so we're thrilled.
I am. The goal is to stay that way for as long as possible. Why did I agree to Ask Me Anything? So Carter Wall, one of your board members, is amazing. She approached me and said, I see you are actively involved. You are the chapter president for the American Association of Blacks in Energy for Greater Boston. Will you talk to us? Tell us about you. So here I am. I had to do it.
Well, and we are so happy that you agreed to it, because we have had many conversations prior to the recent activity that's been happening nationwide, we at NEWIEE have been supporting how to get, originally when NEWIEE started was just basically how do we get women into this industry, because it was such a, and continues to be somewhat of a very male-dominated industry. And now we're also trying to figure out how do we get diversity and women into this industry. Let's start with that question, if you don't mind. Why? Why energy, particularly, and also environment, so few women and so few women of color? So if you could maybe give us some insight on that, we'd really appreciate it.
Sure. So I find when most people say, how did you get into energy? And I tell them, hey, I'm also studying nuclear engineering. They look at me and they're like, sciences, STEM, ew, I can't even begin. How do you wrap your head around that? So when they hear natural gas or the grid, right, they just can't get themselves to see what that impact could be if they join that community. So I think that's been the biggest thing, is that most people believe that it's STEM 100%. You must be an engineer to get into it. And I've found that that's not true.
Well, Meredith Hatfield, who's a very good friend of mine too, has asked a question that I think I'd like to build on that response. She said, being a woman in the engineering field can be lonely. And she's right. You know, we've had many conversations about this, but many of us have dealt with sexism in the industry. Can you, though, speak specifically to the challenges of being a woman of color in the industry, and how you dealt with that, and how white women can be better allies? How can we give you as a support system? And then how do you deal with that? And have you encountered that problem? And also, I'd love to hear how you countered also the sexism question, because I think that is still an important question.
Sure. Well, I found that being the only one, so I am part of 10 people in a team. My manager is a person of color and is a woman, which is a rarity. And one member of my team is a woman. And it's interesting because we band together. When we see another woman, when we see another person of color, someone that looks like us, there is this need to wrap our arms around each other and say, I will help you, you will help me, no matter what, I've got your back, just initially, because we understand how good you have to be to get to this point. Being a woman, I've found that the resume is so long for those in this industry. They have accomplished so much. They know so much because they have to. They have to be the best. Dealing with sexism in the workplace, it is a boys' club. You know it the moment you walk in. Your first day, you come in with your suit, you're ready to go, your stockings on, right? Everything my mom told me to do. And you're surrounded by work boots. And you kind of have to make a decision at that point of what you want your brand to be. Do you want to be the person that can switch it up and play with the boys and use the terrible language that maybe your mom wouldn't be so proud of? Or are you going to own it and say, I'm going to wear my power suit every day, and this is how I want you to treat me in any arena? It's a decision. It's a personal decision, but how you handle each interaction, especially in group settings, right? When you're the new kid anywhere, high school, anywhere, you have to really be thoughtful about what you want to be seen as.
Do you mind sharing a story with us?
Sure.
That maybe could give us some sense of what you felt? If you could walk us through a time when you have felt both those issues in your career.
Sure. In the office, there is a sense of, if your boots aren't dirty, you clearly don't work, right? But everybody gets new boots every year. So I had an incident where it was a bit rougher than I'd like. I didn't feel comfortable. I felt there was a level of aggression that was unprofessional. But another level to that is, as men and women, we have these ideas of how we should be treated. As a woman, I feel you should be a little bit softer with your tone, because our pitches are different, so we take things differently. So in the workplace, I got that comment of, yeah, you're just the gas police. And it set me back that, we work for the same company, same organization. So why is this animosity that I'm the girl that's 5'2" that's going to be looking at your work and making sure that it's done right? So in response, I said just that. we both work for National Grid, right? Yeah. It's the tone. I use very short phrases when I talk to men so that they don't have to mince words. I try to take a lot of my emotion out of situations because it can be very passionate. So just try to be incredibly clear in those situations. And it's not the only time that it's happened. But I knew why it was happening. I knew that I was the new girl. I knew that I was one of the few Black faces in the office. And I know that I carry myself differently. I never hang my head low. I'm very confident in my abilities because I believe anything that can be taught can be learned. So that's just how I approach people in situations that I respect knowledge. I respect the people that have been around forever. So I just tend to move about the world that I'm in with men as asking for help. Tell me what you know because I don't know what I don't know. So that's how I've kind of worked around those situations. It hasn't been an environment that has been awful. There's other guys in the office that have totally embraced me, have taken me out on the road, teach, just everything, just given me the book of here's what you need to know.
And following up on Meredith's half of her question, other half is how white women can be better allies. Is there something you could provide, say even myself, of how we could be of help to embrace this womanhood, that we're all one and in this together?
Well, it's acknowledgement, right? And it is very much take someone under your wing and mean it, right? We get to a certain age and we don't know how to make friends anymore. We think that our circle is just the right size. Add people to your circle, right? Show them the way. Because like I said, there aren't many in the industry. So we need to band together regardless of color. It's vital that when you see something wrong, say something, right? Treat every person that you encounter the way you want to be treated. Meet them with the same energy that they give you. If a person is very skittish, doesn't know what they're doing, sort of, just approach them with a calm voice. Don't do it in a public arena of, hey, I want to be your friend. Just try to do it privately. It works better, I found. Yeah, and I think understanding that the word ally can be difficult to digest because it's almost an acknowledgement that that you're in a better place. And it's a balance. It's a delicate balance of how do you actively say, I know I have it better than you, but I'll help you. It sounds like a charity case versus.
Yeah, no, that's a very good choice of words are important.
Yeah. It's more about getting to know the individual people and vouching for them. Because if I said every Black person is great or every white person is bad, right? You can't make those blanket statements. And not every woman is great. I would say that, they are, but you have to be mindful and you have to make it, you have to make it a family within the confines of what you're dealing with, a group of men that it's still an old school group. There's guys, the median age for National Grid is 55 for their workforce. So not exactly young, but I'm not exactly old. So they see me and I'm the young kid, the girl, and I'm Black, right? The only other thing I could possibly be is in the LGBTQ community. That's the only other thing, right?
Right.
So it's embrace people.
Well, I like to keep with the motto we do of that's on the professional. I like to talk a little bit more on your personal life because apparently someone listened, Sojourn listened to your bio and she of how do you balance the demands of career, continuing education, and I guess she just assumed you have family priorities. And I think you do because you do have a little one, right?
I do. I have a 2-year-old. The toughest
So are you
part,
not on the mommy track, career track? That's not the old, those terms are gone, right?
I waited. I deliberately waited because I didn't think financially I was ready. I wasn't done living. I'm still not done living. As you can see, even having a 2-year-old, I got my motorcycle license. So it's understanding that before my daughter, I was me. And I can't stop being me because I need to remind her and everyone around her that we are individuals and we deserve to live. There were people with plans that didn't wake up today, and we're here. So it's vital that we live.
But the
So
balancing, that's a lot.
yeah,
So how
yeah.
do you do it? How do you balance it all?
So I try to do small bites. With school, it's part-time, right? It's online. That makes life a little bit easier. Working from home with COVID has been amazing. I get to see my daughter every day grow up for hours on end, and she now mimics me typing on the computer. She'll say, I'm going to do homework. She's 2 and she's grasping this. With work, it's dedicating time, right? Whether that's at 2 a.m. when I happen to wake up, or 6 o'clock at night, it's conference calls. You do what you have to, because if you want to be successful as much as you want to breathe, you will be successful. That's what I live by. You want it bad enough, you will make the time. So I'm not on social media as much as folks my age. I just don't have time. It's put into perspective for me in that way.
So I conclude from that answer that basically technology allows you the flexibility to do this.
Sure.
And that you had to give up some things. So other than social media, it sounds like sleep is another thing that you had to give up.
4 hours. 4 hours is solid. That's what I'm getting.
That's good. I like
and
that.
Napping.
And
napping is crucial. Yeah, so it's 20-minute power naps will save you.
There you go.
Yeah, you have to.
Has National Grid adopted that? Some companies have actually adopted the nap policy.
Well, now that I'm home, they don't know if I'm napping, but you build it into your schedule of 20-minute naps.
So maybe this is something that could come out of COVID. The nap policy. We have to implement it. So we have another person who asked a really good question of you that I'd like to get to, because she's a graduate student. She's in the energy related program. There's tremendous lack of diversity, not only the campus, but actually in her energy industry programs, engineering degrees, that STEM thing you and I had talked about at one point.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for what students can do to promote allies or support diverse education on college campus related to energy industry? Is there anything AABE in terms of it at Boston universities? How do we get that going? So she's in STEM, very few women, and more importantly, very few diversity. So any advice?
At some point, I look for perspective in diversity. It doesn't have to be someone that looks exactly like me to give me a very different view of the world. You would be surprised the stories that people have. It's not just about the visual. Someone who has traveled across the world can bring you a whole different look. Or someone that has lived on a farm all their lives and they're now in agriculture school and you're exposed to them. So I would encourage you, one, to get involved in any student groups that they have. I was in student government. I was in the international business group when I was in my undergrad. I made the connections. Also professors. Professors have a huge network of people that you can lean on to connect you. And start your own club. You can do that. Don't be afraid to reach outside of your actual degree program. Find the folks that are doing the medical thing. Places that you don't think you'd find people, you might just find them. Insert yourself in different places and see what you find. In terms of gaining allies, tell your story, right? When you're asked to, share with people what it feels like, because they don't know what they don't know. And you can really build strong connections that will change in ways that you are not even directly involved in by making those relationships, because now someone will have a reference that you're this great person and you're going after STEM related field and you're going into the environmental sector. That could change things, that now I can say, I know this person and they happen to be a person of color.
Well, and I like to do a little ad here for NEWIEE. We have NEWIEE on campus. So I would ask that person to also reach out to NEWIEE. We have Sarah Ann. She's incredible with NEWIEE on campus. and she would love to come and help you get this off the ground at your university. So so please, we have many resources, and I think the key word you said here, Shalaya, is network, 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 network. And don't treat it like only with your peers. Go beyond that. Go all the way up to the professors, even to the administration at the universities and colleges.
Well, I think
this is a very timely issue.
For young people in particular that may not understand networking, because it took me a while. I thought I had to be a fabricated version of myself, right? I had to be likable. I had to do all the right things. You can be yourself if you know what you're looking for. If you come to the table to meet someone and you're able to say, this is exactly what I'm looking for, people now start to get invested. There's not a million options on the table. You have a goal, you know what you want, and they can help you with that. So know what you're looking for when you start to build that network.
So the next question I'm going to ask a little different than the person put it, because I know you don't speak for National Grid, but you do work for a utility that happens to be a natural gas infrastructure utility. In your own opinion, do you see basically that your job in the pipeline instructor, do you see that there is going to be a continuation? And if so, like, what do you see as the future? Because you must be thinking about this. I'm not asking you to answer it from National Grid. I'm asking it from your own personal opinion. Do you see natural gas continuing to play a role? And have you ever heard of hydrogen? I'm sure you have. And do you see this being the bridge over to the hydrogen future? From your perspective, you don't speak for National Grid, but I'm just curious of, what you've heard and what your thoughts are being in the industry.
Sure. So
if you feel comfortable answering it.
Absolutely. Yeah. From a personal view of what we're seeing in the news, right? Pipelines are still being built in places that we may not want them to be, but clearly there is a demand, right? And we have natural gas in abundance. Hydrogen, of course, we know that it may be cleaner, but are utilities companies willing to give up their infrastructure, right? So a company essentially owns the grid. We own the asset in the ground, and we work with cities and towns to get access to it. So in order to implement something like hydrogen, it would have to be community-based, right? It could be done college campus. You have to see how it works, because we don't know what could really go wrong, right? How quickly does it take to get that system up and running when it goes down? What, when a storm comes through, what does that lead to? There's a lot of things that we don't know. I know in Europe, there's a small community that I looked at one point that had done this. They were successful. So there is reason to go that route. The utility companies are investing in research in the area, because why not have a hand in it, right? In addition to having natural gas, if there's a new community that wants to implement this, sure. But I don't think natural gas is going away. I think it's so deep in our communities that exist that it'll be very hard to walk away. I mean, there are people like myself where, yes, I'm still on oil and I have natural gas. So I'm using both for different purposes. But my neighbors are looking to convert from oil, right? But if there are no mains on your street, you can't get natural gas unless you pay for it. So there's this whole dynamic of, we want it because oil can fluctuate so much, and we're not really looking at natural gas prices as closely as oil, because it feels different for most people. So that's, I would definitely say we're moving in the right directions.
And I have to agree with you. I mean, people who might be on this call are too young to remember when we had coal as one of our largest generation, and natural gas was considered the clean energy. I mean, that was a concerted effort to bring natural gas to the region to get us off coal, and we've been successful. So I always remind people, natural gas, you have to thank them, because what would our climate be if we were still burning as much coal as we were 20 years ago? So that is the natural gas story. So moving on to a professional question. Chad Foster asks, this is great stuff. How do you deal with people who have agendas that include holding you back because you're a woman or as a woman of color? And how do you deal with that? So you have a supervisor who kind of holds you back. or ignores you. We have all had those conversations where a woman makes, an observation on a conference table, goes all the way around the room, and then a man repeats verbatim what a woman says, and the supervisor says, Ralph, that was a great suggestion, a great idea. And you're looking like, wait, that was mine. Yeah. So we've all experienced that. I wanted to know, can you relate to that? And can you tell us, and maybe even personalize it, give it, if you can, a story of when that happened to you and how you dealt with it.
So those situations don't happen to me often because I come to the table very confident because I've done my research. So I don't let go. I'm a good bone. I'm not letting go. If I am standing for something, you won't take that credit from me. But ultimately, there have been situations where I felt that I was told, oh yeah, we're going to promote you. Yeah, sure. That position is coming. Just hold on tight, knowing that I have other options, whether it's different departments, different companies. And you have to make an internal decision of what you are willing to deal with. If you choose to continue to try to convince someone that that's your idea, right? So you know the truth and you're still trying to tell someone, pick me, you make a decision. Either you're going to address it directly, it'll be dealt with, or not. If not, what are you going to do? Are you going to leave? Are you going to continue to take it? Are you going to just go the good fight and know that it's possibly never going to go anywhere? For me, I decided to move on. So I moved on and I felt that this was the right decision for me. There was growth opportunity. It was immediate. So that's what I did in that situation when I felt like I'm giving you all these great ideas and you're letting someone else run the show here. And I've put in the hard work and I've done everything you've asked of me. And still you can't acknowledge the work that I'm doing. So I made a decision. Yeah, I'm happy.
And it turned out for the best.
Absolutely.
So sometimes that's what you have to do. To follow up on this question, because you and I shared a little conversation before today, this person asked, how do companies recruit more women in the industry and energy companies? So I thought you could share your personal experience of how you got to Grid, because I think that'll give some insight to people. Because we signed it, the way you got here, we sometimes don't put a lot of emphasis on it. So why don't you share that with everyone?
Yeah, so there's kind of, in the energy sector, it is truly about who you know. Anyone that you meet says, my dad worked here or my cousin works here, someone in this world. For me, I was working in higher ed and my best friend said to me, you're all dressed up. Where are you going? I said, I'm going to a job fair. Do you want to go? You're dressed up enough. Let's go. And we went. And they didn't like me at first. And I eventually got a call because the guy that told me to attend said, oh, let me call. And they brought me in for an interview, thankfully, and they hired me before I left the building. So I felt like if I had known somebody even closer to that job fair, I would have gotten in right then and there. But there's a frame of reference that's kind of needed to say, is this person a good worker? Are they honest? Because a lot of what we do is an honor system, right? Doing the right thing is a big thing that National Grid has, to always do the right thing, whether somebody's looking or not. So that frame of reference is, so I think that's why it occurs quite a bit in the energy field. What was the other question, Mary? There was a part of that about getting women.
Well, they were just wondering how else could we get your personal experiences. You got it through a job fair. How other ways are women able to break into the energy industry? Is there other vehicles to recruit women of color into this industry?
Number one,
do you think there's other
every
methods?
company should be partnered with NEWIEE, right? You guys have a huge platform.
And we did not make you say that, right? This is all on your own.
True. It's absolutely true. This is an organization that you can go to and say, look, we have these job postings and we are looking to add women to this pool to pick from. And if they're good enough for the job, they'll get the job. Very simple. It's, for me, in order to diversify with more women in the workplace of energy, you need to seek them out. You need to go after the new graduates. You need to partner with institutions that you're looking for those particular bodies to fill those positions. So it's seeking them out because most of the time they're not interested because it's so male dominated. They've already dealt with it in school if they are, let's say, an engineer. And in addition to that, you have to look at what departments we're talking about. So legal department is a big department, plenty of female lawyers, but we're seeing a lot more men that work for the energy industry. HR, I mean, environmental, tons. There are tons of female graduates in that world that we're not going after. But if you only just throw up that job posting on your website, you're only going to get it when someone says, hey, there's a job posting, you should apply, right? So that's usually going to be your family.
So let's dive a little deeper into that question. Could it be, because this answers Astrid's question, is it because, how do you find your way around a big utility company? That's who you work for, National Grid, big utility company, owned by a European, Great Britain. How do you deal with that? Is it something for everyone? Is there pros and cons to it? Can you give us a little taste of what it's like to work for a big utility company?
Sure. There are obviously the technical side, working in the field, and we know what that's like. That's hard work. That's manual labor. That's using your brain. It's a very dangerous thing, but it's a risk. It pays well. So those are always the parts of the field work that are very appealing, even for the risk, right? It gives you purpose that I'm doing something very important. On the management side of the house, internally, it's very corporate. In the corporate world, you tend to work in silos. So if I'm engineering, I sit over here and we do our thing. If I'm in finance, I work in this world, and I tend to not go out of it unless we're in the cafeteria. But I've found that if you latch on to someone that's been around a while, that has a good reputation, that will show you the ropes of what other groups do, you can find a lot of positions that you wouldn't think are right for you, right? And you ask the questions of, what do you do, right? Because so many people will say, I'm complex construction. Well, what does that mean? You're a utility company. Are you doing construction, right? Are you building a house? Obviously not, right? But you're working on complex jobs with, 16-inch diameter mains that not everybody can do, where we have to bring in specialized welders from other states to do this particular work, managing the financial aspect. So there's all of these different pieces that you might be very good at, but if you don't ask, you'll never know. You'll end up stuck in those silos. So there's great opportunity because there's so many different departments when you work for a utility company. Obviously there's perks, like paying for your education. You have the ability to travel, right? If you want to go to the UK and you get in the right places, they'll send you overseas across the pond. It's really like, in your department, specifically for me, I've found a really good family that I can lean on them for their specialties. They can lean on me for what I've done. It's interesting in that way because nobody intends to leave the energy sector. No one says, I'm in it and I absolutely hate it. I'm never going to do this again. You don't get to walk away. It just, I don't know many people that said, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this.
Well, then I have a question for you because it's very interesting. You're getting another degree in nuclear energy. Why nuclear? Do you see that as the future? I'm just curious. This is the personal question.
So nuclear was not my first choice. My first choice was mechanical. Mechanical engineering was very appealing to me. I like to think very logically, very critically. I like to open things up and see how they work. So that was my go-to. And I was going to go to Dartmouth, and that work-life balance wasn't going to work. They only had daytime classes. Well, I've got to make a living. I have a daughter to take care of, a household to take care of, and I have aspirations. So going to school during the day was not going to be an option for me. So what I found was a partnership with Excelsior University out of upstate New York and Albany that the company has a relationship with, and they had nuclear engineering. And I said, if I ever want to live near the ocean, I should probably study that. So that's what I chose. And it's one of those fields where there's so much to explore. There's so much to learn. There's so much that we don't know. It's a scary thing, but I feel like once you're into that group, you get so much exposure. In my classes, my Physics 2 course, I was the only woman. But I was in a class with guys that were on submarines, right? What other opportunities do you have with that? So it was really, it's interesting. As I continue through the program, I'm sure that I'll meet more people that have been, in the Navy for 20 plus years and have tons to share with me about their training just in nuclear energy. So that's really why I went after that.
So then one of the takeaways I got from that is, if we have any academia on this call, such as myself at UMass Lowell, we should be working to try to create more opportunities to do evening learning, and not create these barriers for just full-time day
100%.
in the energy space.
Well, and
so we have a question.
Is a big deal for large institutions.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And, I didn't even think of that until you brought up, so that was major shift for you. Yeah. Just because of the inability to do the workaround and the work-life balance. So we have a person who sent in a question. She's finding it difficult, other than the NEWIEE mentoring program, to really get the training she needs to understand her industry. And she's very frustrated. She's an analyst in the solar industry. She wants to know, is this standard in the renewable energy industry, or is it just special to solar? Or do you find at Grid that there are many opportunities to work and learn? Do they provide you those opportunities? And maybe those are things she could bring back to her work. So if you could expand on that.
Sure. So I'm not an expert in solar. I've studied it on my own, but I couldn't tell you about that part of the sector of energy. I can tell you that for National Grid in particular, our training is extensive. So we have a dedicated learning and development group that's all they do is training. And it's rigorous, right? So there are levels to our technicians. There are levels for me being an inspector, and you're tested over and over again annually on the same stuff to make sure that you still know it. So they give you the tools that you need, right? The last thing they want to do is send you into a hole and you don't know what you're doing, and you could kill someone. You could kill a whole neighborhood. They don't want that. So they are overly training you for every little piece of the job. In addition to that, we have organizations like NGA, AGA. These are the big gas groups that provide training for our contractors. They're nationwide. So there's tons of training out there that, for me, National Grid provides, but it's also open to the public. AGA is a great organization that's here, as well as NGA. So if you're interested in natural gas, yes, there's tons of resources. Solar, I'm sure, because it's a much newer utility in a sense, that there's probably less training, but that's also an opportunity for you to create some training guides, right, for what you do know, and kind of lay the foundation for what you expect from your organization. Sometimes a simple presentation of, look, this is what we're missing, this is what other groups do, can start to foster a better learning environment.
So that follows up on a really important question someone asked here. Everyone keeps on talking about we're shifting off of natural gas. Mm-hmm. I guess they keep on trying to find a new career for you, Shayla. But National Grid is getting them more into other areas than just natural gas. They are getting into some of the cleaner energy jobs, such as EV charging stations, and they also have partnered with some of the offshore wind developers. Do you find that you have that flexibility if you wanted to transition out of natural gas, that you could? And could you expand on that a little bit when you keep on shaking your head? Yes. Yeah. How do you do that?
So it's, again, explore, right? So internally, we have all the job postings that are up, which are available to the public too. If you went online and you created your profile, you could see what jobs are available. So when you start to go through that, internally, I would contact our HR office and say, hey, who's the hiring manager? I'm just interested in information about this position. What do they do? A lot of people that I work with currently used to work for the electric side of National Grid. And they said, you know what, I want to try something different. Let's go over to gas. And some folks will go from natural gas to electric. It's different lines of thinking. The technology is different. How you think about power is a little bit different. But absolutely, you can make the transition. You just have to want to. And you have to believe that you can learn anything. So once you equip yourself with that tool, go for it. Why not? There's nothing holding you
It's
back.
interesting that I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because we've heard this many times in Ask Me Anything, where men, if they have one skill on the job description, they go, oh, I should go for this. And women, unless they have over 80% of the skills that are required, they go, oh, I don't qualify. Do you find that's true with women, that we have a tendency to personally hold ourselves back?
So I think for women, we don't highlight or know our worth. We are not actively seeking out the job market and saying, what does someone make that does something similar to what I do? You mentioned someone was an analyst on the line. Have you looked at other analysts in that same field and just pair them up, see what they do as a job, and find out, go online, look up what's the average salary of that person, and know your worth. Look at how your job history, how long have you been with that particular company, what your degrees line up in, and know that. And everything is negotiable, right? Outside of safety, everything's negotiable. So when you go to the table, ask for more. What is the worst they're going to say? No. But most women, they settle. They'll take anything, right? It's just, take me. I want to be a part of this group. Not thinking that a guy's probably going to negotiate in some way, and he's probably going to apply for that job that he probably isn't qualified for. And he's likely to get it because you didn't apply. That's the honest truth.
Yeah, so a couple of things I took away from that, and maybe you can expand on it. Throughout all of your answers, you keep on talking about the importance of standing up for yourself, knowing your own self-worth, and networking. How did you get that self-awareness and confident? I mean, you're very young, but very competent. So how did that come about? If you could give us some of that secret ingredients, that would be great. It might help some women who are listening today.
So I come from strong women. I come from strong men, but the women in my family, purposely, I mean, more than maybe they should, said, you are worthy. They gave me principles to stand on at a very young age. My mother, short story, my mother was functionally illiterate for most of my life. So that illiteracy created coping mechanisms. She said to me, you will read, you will know how to read by reading to her. So I didn't have to know that my mother couldn't read. So I read to her. Those simple things really told me that you can do anything, right? My mom said, you will not be a statistics. You won't be 16 and pregnant on your own. She made that ever apparent because that was her story. My mom was 15 and pregnant and on her own. And when I was born, my father died 7 years later. So she raised me and my 3 brothers, which she later had when she got married and did all the right things. And she's held successful businesses. She is a pillar of strength in our family. My grandmother is the same. She has just retired in her late 70s because she said, this is going to be my velvet coffin. I'm never leaving, just because. And my great grandmother, who just passed away last year, she was a nurse. She got her master's degree from Cambridge College when she was in her 40s with 11 children. There's no excuse for me. I stand on the shoulders of great people, and I can't let them down. That's how I operate. Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, because I think it's important to go back to your roots and understand that and really respect that. And I guess the question we have to do is really provide that confidence in women. We have to give them that assurance that they have to go out and strive. How about networking? I know it might be you have
networking is tough. Networking took me a long time because I don't do small talk well. I love talking about ideas and big things that are happening in the world, and I'm very passionate about whatever I take my time with. So
Correct.
for me, networking doesn't work well in the giant social settings of, oh, let me say, you know, hi, I'm Shalaya Morissette, Senior Technical Inspector for National Grid. It doesn't work for me. So what I found is taking the time to get to know anyone I'm around, asking the right questions and listening with intent, right? Listening to keep that knowledge about that person. Because if you can come back to them and acknowledge that you heard them, it starts to just build into great relationships, lifelong relationships. That's what networking is to me. It's not piecemeal of, oh, I just met Mary. I guarantee you, Mary, when I meet you in person, I will give you the largest hug. And I don't hug people, but we're sharing, right?
That's right. And I can't wait for us to actually meet in person. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So it's for me, networking should be done with a heart. It shouldn't be cold.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that cold email that you send to the director of whatever department that you want to work with. And if you do send that, make it a bit more personal. Read about them, get to know them as a person, and find a connection and build from there. That's what I've done with networking.
Well, and Bonnie gives another suggestion. She says, join your local town commissions. And she's like, there's conservation commissions, there's energy organizers and energy volunteers. So there's a lot of ways that if you just don't know where to turn, you don't want to do it in your office, you don't want to do it maybe in your, university or something, just join your local town. Again, your plate's full. Have you had any experience working with local towns and stuff with the pipeline work? I'm sure you did. Do you want to share a little bit about ways that people could get involved in that level?
Sure. So I work mostly in Rhode Island. So there are 28 different municipalities that I've worked with in the past. So getting involved with them is simply volunteer, do a cleanup, and get to meet the people that are running your town. DPW office always needs help. Attend your town meetings. They're now virtual. I sat for an hour and watched the town meeting just last night in my town. So it's getting out there and seeing what's available. I mean, Google is our friend, right? There's nothing that we can't find on the internet. So it's just seeking it out a bit more. A lot of organizations, especially anybody that has like windmills in their area, you can find that group that set it up and who manages it and say, can I volunteer? Can I do a tour? Right? There are tons of groups, even with some of the turbines, water turbines, you can go and tour them. I know Carter does tours and she loves them, which I'm going to go and see. But once you get in there and you start knowing people to say, hey, I'm friendly, I'm interested in this world, you'd be surprised how much people will invest in you because you're interested. So there's a way to break in. Just go for it. So what's the worst that can happen? Somebody turns you down. You just go on to them. Yeah, just go after it.
So we're almost towards the end of our time, which has been way too short. So I could go on for days, but other people would say, okay, fine, I gotta go. You probably have to go take care of your 2-year-old. We ask every one of our Ask Me Anything this final question. And our hope is that one day we can compile all these into basically some kind of form that we take all these great advice. But what is the best piece of professional advice that you have been given? And if you could share maybe who gave it to you, a little story behind that. And final component of it, and have you implemented that advice or have you taken it to heart? So what is the best piece of professional advice that you've been given, by whom, and have you actually implemented it?
So I have to give you 3. Have to.
Okay. Fine. I'll take them.
Number one is my mom. My mom said to me when I was younger and trying to get my feet wet in my career, she said, never take more than what you need. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like never take more than what you need. And we had this really deep conversation. And that sometimes we take from organizations and we don't give enough back. Take what you need, whether that's mental space, monetary, take what you need and not everything. Second piece of advice, I I got from my last boss when I was working in higher ed at Cambridge College. My boss there, Mark Rotundo, he said to me, if you can make 6 figures and live a great life, do you need more? It was a question that he posed to me because I was leaving. I was going from nonprofit to profit. And he knew the monetary difference. And he said, living is the most important thing that you can do. And I just kind of looked at him and, you know, he's an attorney. He works at this big college. It was a big deal. And it was a reminder to me that career is important, but National Grid is not going to be written on my headstone, right? And we all have to leave here. So it's a healthy thing to continue to remind myself that this is always a balance. And if I can make the monetary side stretch and I'm happy, then let that be that. Because there's just this ladder of success that we're all trying to reach because of society, because of family, whatever reason. So that part is tough. And the last one is from my mentor at National Grid, Robert Obi-Tabbitt. I was getting ready to go into the partnership program. And I was so nervous. So I was like, the first day, I'm going to have to do this networking thing. And it was my challenge for 2020 to get over this fear of small talk, that I would have to give my fabricated self to the world. And I didn't want to do that. And he said to me in conversation, okay, tell me about yourself. And as a woman, I overthink. I say, well, I can't say I'm a mom because then they'll think my priority is not work. And I can't say, well, I'm studying nuclear engineering because then they'll think I'm trying to be too smart. And I don't want to say that I work in pipeline safety, but I want to be, you just go through these motions. And he just said to me, wow, I never thought about it that way. Take a breath and tell me about yourself. And I finally got to the point where I said, you know what? I'm a lifetime learner. I'm a mom and I love what I do, right? It was just that simple. It was just that simple. So it was taking away the overthinking. He really has taught me a lot about that, of just walk it through. Just, it's okay. It's all right. They're going to like you. And if they don't, oh well.
So your advice to women is don't overthink it and just give it a try. What's the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah.
Well, Shalaya, this has been wonderful. We have a few more minutes. I always like to offer the Ask Me Anything. If I did not ask you something that you would like to share with us, because this is your time, and we really appreciate it. But if you wanted to, share something that hasn't been put in a question, what would you like to leave as your final thoughts to the people who are listening today? That would make something in their mind say, wow, I got to take that and go with it. So what kind of final thoughts could you inspire us with? You've done such a great job already. So
I hope
if you
so.
say nothing, I've done it all. It's all out there on the table. I'll say, my God, you've given us more than anybody else. But I just want to give you that opportunity.
Sure. So 2 things. One thing that was brought up in a question was how to bring diversity to your organization. So as a chapter president of ABE, which is the American Association of Blacks in Energy. Essentially, this group is a group of 3,000 members nationwide. They provide direct input into energy policy, regulations, energy technologies, environmental issues, and they foster the growth of people of color within the energy sector. However, they take in all walks of life. So join. You can visit abegreaterboston.com to get more information. You can follow us on Twitter, of course, Abe Boston, or on Instagram, same handle, Abe Boston, AABE. Final thoughts for women in particular. Don't sell yourself short. You're amazing, right? Somebody survived.
Well, we know you are. It's been wonderful. It's been great. I am so glad. And Shalaya is helping us with the Women Shaping the Agenda, our signature event that's coming up in July. I'd love to, since you've been involved in that, could you do the little promo about that for us, Shalaya, so people know about it, since you've been personally involved in it, and I would love for you to do it if you don't mind.
So this is going to be my first attendance to their signature event, and the planning process has been amazing, right? So you will see a real conversation about what comes to the table, right? When you're working with phenomenal women, right? They are able to execute under time constraints that no one should be under. And they make things happen. So July, are we talking July 23rd,
Yes.
right?
23rd, correct.
Oh, look, my memory's still working. So they are bringing in a wonderful speaker. It hasn't been announced. I won't say it if it hasn't been announced.
Yes, I think we're doing our first announcement. Yes, so it
Okay.
has been announced.
It
Yep.
has? Okay.
Yes.
I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not sure. You got to attend, you got to visit the website. Please, please, please come. Spend an hour and a half of your time listening to great stories about the energy sector regarding the inaccessibility, right? So for a utility company, National Grid, Eversource, all the big guys, right? There's a disconnect between what their customers look like and what they look like. So talking about that is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be really good. Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you so much for all your volunteer time. And I wanted you to do that so everyone can see anyone can be involved. NEWIEE is an all volunteer group, and we welcome anybody's time and energy. In the few minutes we have left before the Women Shaping the Agenda, our signature event, we have another Ask Me Anything. You're going to get stuck me as the moderator again. But we have another great woman in leadership role, Sarah Burns, former CEO of Avangrid Central Maine Power, and now on the board of directors. So you're going to get a perspective. I think it will be interesting, won't it, Shalaya, to see a perspective from someone in the C-suite and how she got into that level and into those roles. So I think I would really encourage everyone to join on July 8th for our next Ask Me Anything. Shalaya, I want to thank you for your time, your inspiration. The chat is exploding with people just telling me that you are fantastic. You're wonderful. They feel so empowered and inspired by your conversation. So I want to thank you for being so open and honest, sharing your stories with us today. And again, I want to thank our sponsors. Without their support of Eversource, First Light Power, Robinson Co., and Mass CEC, we couldn't do these events. So we want to thank them so much for our sponsorship. I'm Mary Yusevich. I want to thank everyone for joining us today and hope you have a great rest of Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Shalaya.